So joining me now to talk about the debt, currency, and the banking system is Ellen Brown, author of Web of Debt, and more recently, The Public Bank Solution. Ellen, thank you.
Thank you.
We're talking about debt. Let's talk about the largest purchaser of U.S. debt. That would be the Federal Reserve. And it's actually not so federal. Their website has a .gov address. That would be .gov. But there are 12 reserve banks, and they have .org addresses. So is the Federal Reserve public or private or both? What's the deal?
The Federal Reserve is composed of 12 branches, all of which are 100% owned by the banks in their district. We, the taxpayers, do not own one single share of any Federal Reserve bank. The Federal Reserve Board is considered a public-private entity because they're appointed by the Congress. There's the congressional and presidential appointment and approval. But once they're appointed, they're pretty much on their own. They're called an independent central bank.
Right.
But they're not, so they're independent of government, but they're not independent of the big banks that own the 12 Federal Reserve branches and that the Federal Reserve actually considers their constituency.
Well, we have a quote from an American entrepreneur, and it's too bad people don't know more about the Federal Reserve. This is from Henry Ford. He said, "It is well that the people of the nation do not understand our banking and monetary system, for if they did, I believe there would be a revolution before tomorrow morning." So why are people so in the dark about our banking and monetary system?
For one thing, I think we've been brainwashed for at least 100 years that our people are pretty much plugged into TV these days. They don't have time to read. That is all part of our monetary system, where you have to work 2 jobs, or families are just so busy that they don't really have time to read books. They're lucky if they know about the alternative media. Nobody points them to the alternative media. You have to find that yourself. And so otherwise, you just turn on the TV, and what you see is mostly on the news. It's all about murders and violence, but nobody gives you the big picture of what's really going on. So the way you learn it in school, you think that money is created by the government, and so you blame the government for anything that goes wrong with the money system. But really, it's virtually all created by banks, and all our monetary problems are due to fraud and mishandling by the banks.
Well, we're trying to give the big picture right now. So let me ask you another question. At one time, the banks actually made most of their money by extending loans to entrepreneurs, whether they be farmers or manufacturers. So in other words, they lent money out to people who were doing productive things. But now it seems most of their income derives from derivatives, $700 trillion and growing. So how did that contribute to the previous financial crisis that we had in 2008? And are we going to see something similar again?
I would predict we're going to see something worse. In 2008, Lehman Brothers, it was Lehman Brothers Investment Bank that went down and took down the money market with it. There was a run on the money markets, and that made the banks insolvent because they couldn't borrow from the money market. But Lehman Brothers was not a depository bank.
No.
Glass-Steagall had been repealed, which meant that investment banks and depository banks could mingle their funds, but Lehman Brothers wasn't that type of bank. Now what we have is the two biggest banks, the 2 big Wall Street banks dealing in derivatives are Bank of America, which their Merrill Lynch branch does their investing, and J.P. Morgan Chase. And both of them have over $70 trillion in derivatives and over $1 trillion in deposits. And they are allowed to commingle the derivatives and the deposits. Or the derivatives, the casino and the deposits are all one big system. So when they have another big gambling bust, the derivatives claimants actually get to go first before everybody else, before the depositors, because of the Bankruptcy Reform Act of 2005, which was pushed through by the banks, which gives super priority to derivative claims, which makes no sense at all because they are sheer gambling, whereas the depositors think that that's actually their savings in the bank. Few people know that when you deposit your money in the bank, it becomes the property of the bank, and you have an IOU. So you are just an unsecured creditor, which puts you way down the line in the bankruptcy proceedings.
Unfortunately, we have just about 45 seconds left, but I want to get to that super priority in a second. You mentioned the money market funds. What kind of would you say the Federal Reserve was instrumental itself in creating a run on the money markets in 2008 after Lehman?
No, not in 2008. That was, the money market is the shadow banking system, so it's not actually regulated. It doesn't have reserve requirements, it doesn't have capital requirements, and the money market, there was a run on the money markets because after Lehman Brothers collapsed, the dollar broke the buck, as they said.
Right.
So money market is what your dollar is supposed to be worth, at least $1, and it went down to 97 cents, and so all the investors pulled their money out en masse.
Yeah.
So the banks did not have liquidity to cover their loans.